All right. Welcome to another deep dive. I am so excited for this one. The stuff you all sent in. Wow, there's some really fascinating stuff in here. We're going to be talking about social justice, women's roles in society, education, wealth inequality, all the big stuff.
Buckle up.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm already seeing some really thought-provoking ideas and connections that I never would have thought of before. So
Yeah.
I think this is going to be really cool.
Yeah, for sure. For me, like right off the bat, what jumps out is this idea that diversity, we hear that word a lot, right? Societal diversity. It's not just some feel-good buzzword. The source is saying that it's actually essential for progress. Like literally, without diversity of thought, diversity of action, humanity would never have gotten past the Stone Age, just stuck.
It's true. I mean, it makes sense, right? If everyone's doing the same thing, thinking the same way, how do you get new ideas? How do you innovate?
Exactly. And they go on to say that different groups of people, they bring different essential things to the table, different strengths, different perspectives. And if we ignore that, if we try to homogenize everything, we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot, when it comes to moving forward.
Like trying to build a car with only mechanics. You know what I mean? You need designers, you need engineers, you need people who know how to market it. To make something truly great, you need all those different skills and perspectives.
100%, yeah.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. The source dives into this whole discussion of the historical treatment of women. And they make this really, thought-provoking argument where they say that society has often taken women's strengths and framed them as weaknesses, and then used that to kind of restrict their freedom and their roles.
Yeah, it's a really interesting take. It makes you think about how these societal norms, right, they can be used to justify all kinds of inequality. And it ties into this whole idea of social purity that they talk about. It's like trying to create a pure society by restricting people's freedom actually kind of backfires.
So the more you try to control things, the more problems you create.
Basically, yeah. And get this, the source even argues that sometimes the societies that brag the most about their purity are often the ones that have the least actual purity, compared to societies that are more free and open.
Oh, wow. That's kind of a mind-blowing thought. And I love how this source just challenges us to really reconsider some of these assumptions we have about progress and freedom, It's not about fitting everyone into the same mold. It's about valuing everyone's unique contributions.
Yeah, exactly.
And this brings us to another big idea that they talk about, which is coordinated cooperation.
Oh, yeah, they're huge on this.
Yeah, they really emphasize that a thriving society isn't built on this master-servant dynamic, but on recognizing each other's strengths and working together. It's not about one group dominating another. It's about collaboration. It's about, working together to achieve something bigger than any one person could do on their own.
Totally. And they specifically talk about men and women being partners in this, leveraging their unique strengths, not to compete with each other, but to work together for the benefit of everyone.
Yeah. And now, okay, get ready for this, because this is the part that really just blew my mind. The source asks this question: have women truly lost their rights? Or have they, out of trust and large-heartedness, placed their destiny in the hands of men?
Whoa.
I know, right?
That is a deep question. It's such a powerful question because it makes you think about these power dynamics in a whole new way, right? Are we giving up our power? Are we being deprived of it? What's actually going on here?
Exactly. And they go on to say that freedom, true freedom, it's not a gift, It's not something that someone can just give you or take away from you. It's like a fundamental right. It's inherent to who we are as human beings.
But it's almost like a responsibility, We're responsible for our own freedom.
Totally. And to really illustrate this point, they use this analogy. I love how they use these analogies. They talk about this, well, I wouldn't say snobby, but maybe a little out-of-touch lady who goes around lecturing on women's freedom, but she's living a life that's completely enabled by her husband. Her husband is financing everything, he's managing everything, and it's just this stark contrast between her words and her actions.
Yeah, it really highlights that hypocrisy, are we walking the walk or just talking the talk? And it brings us to that distinction between freedom and license, right? Freedom isn't about just doing whatever you want without consequences.
Yeah, it's about finding that balance between individual liberty and responsible action.
Right.
Being mindful of the impact of our actions on others.
Exactly. Freedom without responsibility can be really destructive, actually.
Right. Okay, so let's get into some specifics now. The source dives into a bunch of different areas where these ideas play out, and they start with inheritance laws. And what I find so refreshing is they don't try to say, okay, here's the right way to do inheritance. they actually present different perspectives on it.
Yeah.
And they really emphasize this need for fairness and practicality.
I mean, it's such a complex issue, right? There are so many different ways to approach it, and what works for one society might not work for another.
Exactly. And they even talk about the advantages of the patrilineal system,
Yeah.
like where inheritance is passed down through the father. They say that in some contexts, it can actually lead to greater paternal responsibility and create stronger support structures for mothers.
Right, like it's not about blindly endorsing one system over another. It's about understanding the potential benefits and drawbacks of each approach and then figuring out what makes the most sense for that particular society.
And get this, they even have some really interesting things to say about the dowry system.
Oh, the dowry.
Yeah, instead of just like condemning it outright, they actually explore the economic rationale behind it. Like, why would this system develop? What purpose did it serve?
That's where their commitment to nuance really shines through. It's like, have you ever thought about the economic forces at play behind some of these, seemingly outdated social customs?
It's so mind-blowing. And it's like they're peeling back these layers of complexity and forcing us to think about these things from all these different angles.
Yeah, they definitely don't want us to just accept things at face value.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so another fascinating topic they tackle is social interaction between men and women.
Yeah.
And they make this really interesting point about finding a balance between freedom and a well-defined code of conduct. Like, it's not about isolating women from the modern world.
Right. They're not saying, like, lock women away. It's more about how do we navigate these interactions in a way that's respectful and honors everyone's freedom.
Yeah, and they're really clear that trying to suppress natural human tendencies or isolate people from the world around them, it's just not going to work.
It's like trying to hold back the tide,
Totally. And okay, so speaking of breaking down barriers, the source also talks a lot about education.
Mm.
And they really challenged the traditional definition of education, like the whole degrees and diplomas thing. They argue that true education is more about practical skills, application, and character development.
And to illustrate this point, they tell this great story about this scholar and this boatman. And the scholar, he's full of book knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
He thinks he's so smart. And he kind of looks down on this boatman who's just this simple guy who ferries people across the river. But then, guess what? The boat starts sinking.
Oh, no.
And guess who saves the day? The boatman. Because he has the practical skills, the real-world experience.
Right. The scholar's all about theory, but he can't actually swim or fix the boat.
Exactly.
That is such a good story. What's the point of all this knowledge if you can't use it to actually navigate the real world, right?
Right. And the source goes on to critique people who prioritize this kind of like superficial refinement, like being polite and having good manners, but then they're actually really hypocritical and not genuinely kind.
So it's like walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And they also critique these exclusive clubs and institutions that reinforce social divisions. They're saying, like, think about the organizations in your own community. Are they creating a sense of unity and inclusion? Or are they perpetuating this us versus them mentality?
That is such a good question. And this leads to their critique of vested interests.
Oh.
They argue that these interests actively hinder social progress by exploiting ignorance and inequality for their own gain.
They specifically call out those who use the concept of karma to justify poverty and suffering. It's like, are you really trying to help? Or are you just trying to maintain the status quo?
And their language gets so powerful here. They talk about the insatiable hunger of those who lack a fulfilling ideology.
Yeah.
And it just highlights this urgency to address these systemic inequalities that are creating so much suffering.
It's a reminder that these aren't just abstract concepts. These issues have real consequences for real people.
Absolutely. And this sets the stage for their discussion of potential solutions. What's interesting is that they actually critique both Robin Hood-style wealth redistribution, A&D brute force communism.
They say that neither of those extremes is a sustainable solution. It's like, just taking from the rich or forcing everyone into this rigid system ignores human nature and the need for individual freedom.
Right. So what do they propose instead?
They offer this more nuanced path, one that blends humanistic appeals with strategic action. They're saying that we need both a change of heart A&D practical steps to create real change.
So it's like an inside-out A&D outside-in approach.
Yeah.
We need to work on ourselves and the systems around us.
Exactly. And that's where this concept of sadhana comes in. It's a Sanskrit word that refers to spiritual practice or discipline. And they argue that cultivating inner strength through sadhana can help us bridge the gap between our ideals and reality.
That's interesting. So it's about developing our own inner strength so that we can actually go out and make a difference in the world.
Precisely. And at the core of it all, they say, is a profound love for humanity.
And they're not talking about some mushy-gushy feeling, right? They're talking about a love that compels us to act, to fight for justice, to create a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
Exactly. And they give this example of nationalizing industries. Even in those situations, they argue that love for humanity should be our guiding principle. It's about finding solutions that meet people's basic needs while also respecting their dignity and individual circumstances.
So it's like even when we're talking about these big systemic changes, it's always about people, about compassion, about understanding.
Absolutely. And they also make this really powerful point about the destructiveness of revenge. Like holding on to anger and resentment towards those who have perpetrated injustices, it just keeps us stuck in the past.
Yeah, it prevents us from moving forward.
Exactly. They argue that forgiveness and understanding are essential for creating a truly just and equitable world.
Wow. I'm already feeling my wheels turning here. This is making me think about my own role in all of this,
Yeah.
How can I contribute to creating a more just and equitable world?
It's really powerful stuff. What are your thoughts so far? What's resonating with you the most?
I think what's hitting me the hardest is just this idea that we all have a role to play. We can't just sit back and wait for someone else to fix things.
Yeah.
We all have to take responsibility for our actions, for the choices we make, and understand that even small acts of kindness and understanding can make a difference.
I love that. I'm so excited to keep digging into this with you.
Me too. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to explore here.
Let's take a quick break to let everything sink in, and then we'll come back and dive even deeper into this incredible source. All right, welcome back. It's amazing how the source, it connects all these ideas about social justice, women's roles, education, economics, like all these things that we often think of as separate issues. It ties them all together into this cohesive, mind-blowing narrative.
Yeah, it's like they're showing us that we can't really address any one of these issues in isolation, right?
Yeah.
It's all connected. And at the heart of it all is this profound respect for the inherent value of every single human being.
Exactly. And that brings us to their perspective on social progress. What does it actually mean to progress as a society? They're arguing that it goes way beyond just material wealth or technological advancements, It's about creating a society where everyone has the opportunity to reach their full potential, both as individuals and as part of a collective.
Yeah, it's not just about getting richer or having fancier gadgets. It's about creating a world where everyone can thrive.
And they really emphasize that progress is not a solo mission. It's not like one person can just snap their fingers and make it happen.
Yeah.
It requires everyone's contribution. Thinkers, doers, supporters, everyone has a part to play.
I love how they use this analogy of Hanuman and the squirrels building a bridge across the sea. Hanuman, this super strong, powerful monkey god. He's carrying these huge boulders. But then you have these tiny little squirrels, and they're carrying pebbles. And it's both of those contributions are essential to building that bridge, right?
Totally. And it's such a powerful reminder that every effort matters,
Yeah.
No matter how small it might seem in the grand scheme of things, it can still contribute to something much bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, and it's a call to really appreciate and value everyone's contribution, not just the ones that are the most visible or get the most recognition.
Exactly. They're encouraging us to look beyond these traditional narratives of history that focus on these select few heroes while ignoring all the countless individuals who actually made those achievements possible.
Right. It's like they're saying true history is a tapestry woven from the threads of everyone's lives, not just the lives of the rich and famous. And that kind of leads into another really important point they make about the dangers of these superiority and inferiority complexes, when we get stuck in these mindsets of, I'm better than you, or I'm not good enough.
Yeah, they argue that these complexes, they create these divisions between people and prevent us from working together harmoniously. If you think you're superior, you inevitably start to devalue the contributions of others, and that just breeds conflict and resentment.
And then on the flip side, if you have this inferiority complex, you might feel like your voice doesn't matter, like you're not worthy of contributing, even if you have amazing ideas or talents.
And it's all a big loss for everyone, because we miss out on all these different perspectives and contributions.
Yeah, totally. And they highlight how these complexes can manifest in really subtle ways too, like dismissing someone's ideas just because of their social status or their age or their level of education,
Yeah.
It's a reminder to really check our own biases and approach everyone with an open mind, recognizing that we all have something valuable to offer.
It's all about humility,
Yeah.
recognizing that we can learn from anyone, regardless of their background or position in society.
This source makes this really bold statement that 75% of the evils in society are the result of the injustices that people commit against each other. Now, whether that's an exact number or not, it really drives home the point that our actions have a ripple effect. What we do impacts not just ourselves, but the entire social fabric.
It's a powerful call to really examine our own behavior, like
Ah,
how are we contributing to or challenging systems of injustice in the world around us?
yeah, that's a big question. And it brings us back to that core message of the source, which is the importance of genuine love for humanity.
Oh, they talk about this a lot.
They do, yeah. And they're not talking about some like fluffy, sentimental feeling. They're talking about a love that inspires action, a love that motivates us to create a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
It's about recognizing the inherent dignity and worth of every individual, regardless of their background, their beliefs, their circumstances, and treating everyone with compassion, respect, and understanding.
Yeah, it's a big challenge, right? But it's also so inspiring. It makes you want to step up and do your part, even in small ways, to make the world a little bit better.
And that's exactly the point. The source reminds us that we all have a role to play, that even seemingly small acts of kindness and understanding can ripple outward and inspire others to do the same.
This deep dive has been so thought-provoking. We've explored so many incredible ideas, and I'm sure you're already making connections to your own life and experiences, right?
Absolutely. What's standing out to you as the most important takeaway from all of this?
I think for me, it's this idea that true progress is not about competition. It's not about dominance. It's about cooperation. It's about recognizing our shared humanity and working together to create a world that works for everyone.
That's beautiful, and it leads us perfectly into our final thoughts. The source emphasizes that true social progress requires us to value all contributions, not just the ones that are the most visible or celebrated. It's about recognizing the inherent worth of every person and the unique gifts they bring to the world.
Yeah, and that recognition, that shift to perspective can be so powerful, right? It
Yeah.
can really change everything.
Absolutely. This deep dive has been so insightful. It's like we're seeing the world with fresh eyes, with this renewed sense of hope and possibility.
Yeah, and what I love is it's not just about giving us all the answers. It's about giving us a framework for thinking about these issues, for approaching them with more nuance and complexity.
Yeah, they're not giving us a blueprint. They're giving us a compass, to help us navigate these complex issues and find our own way forward. So as we wrap up this part of our discussion, I want to encourage you to think about what resonates most with you, what questions this source has raised for you, and most importantly, how can you apply these principles in your own life, in your own community?
The journey towards a more just and equitable world, it's a long journey,
Yeah.
And there will be challenges along the way, for sure. But I think we can draw strength from the wisdom of those who have come before us and from our shared commitment to building a better future for everyone.
And remember, you're not alone in this. There's so many people out there, so many organizations working toward a more just and compassionate world. Find your people, connect with them, and let's create the future we want to see.
This conversation has given me such a renewed sense of purpose, this feeling that we really can make a difference, that we can create a better world if we work together, if we approach these challenges with compassion, creativity, and this deep commitment to our shared humanity.
It's a beautiful vision, and I believe it's possible.
Me too. And it all starts with each of us, taking those small steps, making those daily choices that reflect our values, and never giving up on the dream of a more just and compassionate world.
That's the spirit.
It's so easy to think that only those big, huge actions, like the really dramatic stuff, that's what really makes a difference. But this source, it reminds us that even just small acts of kindness can change things for the better. Just like trying to understand each other a little bit more, just being kind. Those everyday things can actually contribute to a more just and compassionate world.
It really is about shifting our focus from me to we, right? Understanding that we're all in this together, our well-being, it's interconnected. We can't really thrive as individuals or as a society if we're leaving people behind, if people aren't able to reach their full potential.
Yeah, it's like that saying, no one is free until everyone is free.
Oh, yeah.
We either rise together or we don't rise at all. And this source, it really pushes us to move beyond those simplistic solutions. It's not about finding that one magic answer. It's about embracing the complexity of these issues.
Right. It's messy, it's complicated, and there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Exactly. And it requires us to be willing to have those tough conversations,
Yeah.
to think critically, to challenge our own assumptions, to be open to new ideas.
Totally. And it's not a one-time thing either, right? It's an ongoing process. It's about constantly learning and growing and adapting. And most importantly, it's about action, right? It's not enough to just talk about these things. We have to actually put these principles into practice in our everyday lives.
So true, so true. And what I love about this source is that it leaves us with this sense of hope. This feeling that change is possible, but it takes all of us working together.
Yeah, it's a call to action, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, what are you going to do about it?
Right, exactly. And I think what's so powerful about that is that it reminds us that we all have the power to make a difference. It's not about waiting for someone else to fix things or hoping that some magical solution will just appear. It's about each of us stepping up and saying, okay, I'm going to be the change I want to see in the world.
I love that. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I really encourage you to keep exploring these ideas. Think about what resonated most with you. What questions did this source bring up for you? And most importantly, how can you apply these principles in your own life, in your own community?
Yeah, because this is just the beginning, right? The journey towards a more just and equitable world. It's a journey. There's no finish line. And there will be challenges along the way. But we can learn from each other, we can support each other, and we can draw strength from this shared commitment to creating a better future for everyone.
And remember, you're not alone in this. There are so many incredible people and organizations out there working towards the same goals. So find your people, connect with them, and let's build that future together.
This deep dive has been amazing. It's given me so much to think about, and I really hope it's done the same for you. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey of exploration. And until next time, keep diving.